Get ready for another episode of HypnoMum and Ayla on hypnosis and surgery.
Okay, welcome everybody to a new episode of the podcast HypnoMom and Ayla. We're having a very exciting episode today because we're going to talk to two recently graduated OMNI students, and we're going to talk about the topic of the subconscious mind during surgery, because those two students happened to have had surgeries, and during the training they did a very interesting exploration to find out if they could retrieve information from that surgery using hypnosis. And we're going to talk to them about it. And of course, our expert, veteran, senior hypnotist, and already famously named HypnoMom is also here. HypnoMom, how are you feeling today?
Very good. Excited to do a new podcast, of course.
Yes, and an exciting topic, right?
Most certainly.
Because you were not there during the training.
Mhm.
So this is going to be also very interesting for you to hear. I was there with you guys when you did the session, but let me first introduce you. Well, we have Roberto here. Roberto, can you remind me your last name?
It's kind of difficult to say for Dutch people usually, but it is Di Pietro.
Ah, perfect. It's better that you say it than me then, because then the sound comes across.
Perfect.
Well, Roberto, you are a hypnotherapist and you have your practice in Haarlem, right?
I'm starting right now, yes.
You're starting one and you're working with regression to cause. And I think we can already call you an expert because you've experienced it yourself and practiced it many times. So very happy to have you here with your fellow student, Mengjia. Mengjia, can you also pronounce your last name for the audience?
So very common Chinese last name, Cheng.
Cheng, yeah.
Mm.
Perfect. So you are an entrepreneur and you help your clients with their goals using meditation and breath work and yoga, and now most recently also with hypnotherapy. And you also organize tea ceremonies.
Correct, yes.
Did I miss anything?
No, perfect.
So it was a joy having you on the training, and I think maybe it's good to start if you could give a small summary, like what did you need surgery for, and how was that emotionally leading up to that surgery? Roberto, can I start with you?
Sure. Well, my surgery was about, I had a thyroidectomy, as you can see from my neck. When it was found, it was already metastasizing, so it was already spreading very quickly, apparently. So not only I had the thyroid removed, but also the majority, if not all, the lymph nodes on my right side of the neck. And the surgery went deep as the clavicle bone, basically. So it was quite heavy to undertake. It was also a lengthy surgery because it was 6 hour by default, but then something went wrong also. So it was prolonged to two more hour at least.
So surgery in the end. Okay.
Was a long surgery, and of course my feeling moving towards the surgery were the feeling that anybody could imagine. So I was anxious, I was stressed, I was afraid, especially of all the contraindication that I've heard from many doctors and people that had the same surgery, etc. So as you can imagine, it was a challenging part of my life, but I went through it. So yes.
How long was the, knowing that you had to go to undergo this surgery and the actual moment it happened? How much time was there?
It was really, really fast because it was July, end of July. It was 26, 27 of July when I had the first results that showed that I had not one, not two, but three carcinomas, basically. 2 in the thyroid, and 1 in the lymph node. So from that point, they just told me that I should have waited for a call in a very short time span. And after, well, the 13th of October of the same year, I was ready on the operating table. So everything happened really, really fast, really quickly.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing. We will go into it in more detail later. Mengjia, can you share about the reason for your surgery?
Yes. So what I discovered is that I had a ovarian cyst. And so normally they would recommend you to remove it through surgery if it's more than 5 centimeter. But by the time I found out through ultrasound, it was already 17 centimeters. So it's already over 3 times bigger. So by that time, I already knew even if it's nothing life-threatening, my best case scenario would still be to undergo a surgery. But the surgery itself is actually pretty standard procedure. Normally just takes about an hour. So we started with the idea to do a laparoscopy. So it's cutting small incisions, most likely several of them, so they can go from different angles and using a camera to go in and take the liquid out and then remove the tissues. But they did explain me that there could be other possibilities because mine was already so big. So there is a chance that they couldn't remove it through this simpler procedure that they will have to perform a laparotomy. So that's like cutting it open to take it out. Yeah. So luckily, I didn't really have to do that. So through 4 incisions that they were able to completely remove it.
But this happened while you were under anesthesia,
Yeah,
right? So your conscious mind was not aware of it happening at the
yeah,
time.
correct. Yes. So my feeling leading towards the surgery was actually quite eager to have it done because of the size of it, and also it started to grow pretty fast once I discovered. And it was causing a lot of discomfort in life. And so from simple things like movement or becoming harder to fall asleep to like it's really pushing my other organs, kind of similar to pregnancy. So I was having more problem to eat. So my stomach get full very fast. So I have to like eat food more in smaller quantities throughout the day. And there's also this risk that it could have a torsion. So that's basically the only very urgent issue that could happen when you still have it. Then that can be really painful. So I think at the time I was just very looking forward to have it removed. But unfortunately, the waitness was already like almost 3 months, and due to the shortage at the hospital, they can only inform you a week in advance. So when they found out it was so big, all the tests went very fast because they have to rule out possibility of cancer and so on. But turns out to be all good. So eventually, it was just longer waiting time.
Okay, so you were actually eager to have it done, but you had a longer waiting list, and versus Roberto, you were like anxious, building towards that surgery. But you also mentioned there were like some contraindications for your surgery. Like, can
Yes.
you tell just a little bit about that? Because I was wondering about that.
Well, the contraindication that they inform me about, of course, they're mandated by law to inform the patient on what could happen during surgery. And in my case specifically, was mainly the risk of when performing the incision, because there are critical nerves on this portion of the neck that goes to command different muscles of the neck, of the shoulder, the trapezius, etc. And that was one. And something went wrong there also. Another contraindication was that under the thyroid, there are 4 very small glands that are not palpable, but they're there behind the thyroid, that are called parathyroid glands. And basically, the function of this gland is to distribute and regulate the intake of calcium in the body. So it is incredibly important for what you can imagine: bones, kidneys, filtration, etc. And of course, it was a difficult spot because everything is so clamped together there. And in fact, two of these veins that connect to two of these glands were cut. And that what prolonged, extended the time of my surgery by 2.5 hours, because the surgeon did everything he could to fix the issue. Otherwise, I should have stayed all my life on calcium supplements and subjected of many problems regulating calcium in my body, which thankfully he was able to fix.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's nice to hear that
Yeah.
that they then really take the effort to make sure that, you know, you don't have to live with that.
No, I'm extremely happy that that part went completely fine. Of course, the other aspect is that I lost the function in some muscles, in my shoulder and in my neck. So
Yeah.
it's a bit tricky to perform. It was in the beginning, it was much worse, of course. Now it's getting better because the body is adapting
Yeah.
to different kind of movement, how to perform them. And yeah, so I was difficulty on raising my right arm. Above my shoulder was impossible, like until probably 1 year ago.
Okay.
But as you can see now, I can do it. So
Yeah.
it's getting a
It's
little bit better.
it's improving.
Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing. And I think there's already so much to unpack, but I'm curious, HypnoMom, do you have any questions?
No, at the moment I don't have questions because the questions I have, they are on the list already.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think it might be, you know, interesting to note as I'm listening to you, especially to your story, Roberto, and what we know from hypnosis, like what the mind expects to happen tends to be realized is one of the rules that we spoke about during the training. And I can imagine that, you know, you having to listen to this contraindication, which is super understandable, but it kind of, I can imagine it impacting how you think about the surgery, how you imagine yourself coming out of it. Did you have ideas about that or thoughts about that?
Well, Ayla, I can tell you that coincidentally enough, the two contraindications that I listed are the two that I was afraid of the most. And those two were actually the two that came to realization. So what really happened was dictated in a way by my fears as I see it now.
Okay.
Because of course there were many other contraindications of smaller topics that my brain did not want to calculate. And to this day, I don't even remember.
Interesting.
And they didn't happen. But what stuck the most was this issue for the parathyroid glands,
Yeah.
which happened, and the loss of the muscles,
Yeah.
which also happened.
Yeah.
These two were my major fears. And it's not only from the doctors that came the fear, but from mostly the people around me with no medical background. Because it was already hard enough to be confronted with doctors and surgeons, etc., to get an opinion, a second, a third, and hear the same thing constantly. And
Law of compounding.
it was a lot of compounding, exactly. And seeing that the information was always the same, presented in just different words, it really came through. And I
Yeah.
really made it mine as a fear. And
Yeah.
especially like with colleagues and friends, I had to, of course, have the uncomfortable conversation that, hey guys, I got cancer, so I'm gonna leave work for a little bit, etc. And people started crying at the word cancer, There was no conversation. There was just emotions and crying and, oh, are you going to be fine? Well, I don't know. They were asking me if I was going to be fine. And the only thing that I could tell them is that, of course, I hope so. But if you are interested, this is what my doctors told me. So I was also compounding for myself every time I had to talk about it.
Oh,
And it
wow.
was not a pleasant experience, to be fair. And until I decided a month before the surgery, I'm not gonna speak about it anymore because I just want to process it now
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, in terms of what we know about hypnosis and what bypasses the critical faculty, I mean, we mentioned compounding. If a message gets repeated,
Mhm.
there is a higher chance that it comes to your subconscious and it has an actual effect on your body.
And it did.
And fear also kind of increases the probability of something entering because our body, our subconscious always wants to protect us. Okay, well, thanks for sharing so openly. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Mengjia, did you have any expectations for after the surgery or things that you were repeating in your mind like Roberto has shared, or was it different for you because you were looking forward to it in a sense?
Yeah, I think after the surgery, I was happy that I reached the best case scenario. But I did hear afterwards in my the follow-up appointment with my doctor about what actually happened. So I got to know that there was complication, that the surgery of 1 hour actually took 3 times longer because of the bleeding. And that's also why I had to stay an extra day in the hospital just to make sure that I will be okay. Also that they confirmed their original diagnosis of me having endometriosis, which is a chronic condition. So at that moment, I felt a bit like an unfinished business because I was so looking forward to have the surgery. So it's like one giant step to help me go back to the normal life. And now I discovered why I had it because of this chronic condition that will be a lifelong challenge that I still have to manage in the future. So it felt like not only it's not gonna be only about the recovery anymore. I still need to figure out a way to have it under control. So pretty much the second day after the surgery, I had to be put on pills, since they know exactly what I have now. And I had a lot of side effects with it. And so I had like 4 months of continuous bleeding, and the depression was growing really strong. So I had like a very different timeline in stories from like things that I thought probably is gonna be nothing. And until that I felt, well, for 4 months, I still couldn't have my condition under control.
Yeah, so for you, the mental sort of anxiety started more after
Yeah.
the surgery than leading up towards it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's also, I think, the reason why we're having this podcast, because I mentioned during the training something that we anecdotally, hear is that, we work with regression. So a client comes to us with an emotional problem, and then you want to locate where did this problem start, what experience, what event caused it. And so occasionally we end up with a person, a client, who retrieves information from when they are undergoing surgery and they're actually under anesthesia, but still the subconscious then brings up information. So I thought maybe HypnoMom, maybe you can share a little bit about this, what we know about this.
Yes, I will do that. And first of all, I will share what Dave Ellman wrote about it in his book. And next, I looked up some scientific research on this topic. But Dave Ellman shares in his book Hypnotherapy about a woman suffering from unexplained severe pain after a gallbladder surgery. And despite all the medical tests that confirmed she fully had recovered, the woman under deep hypnosis revealed that she had heard during surgery that the surgeon said that she would never be the same, and her subconscious mind had interpreted this as a lasting health impairment, which likely contributed to her pain. And intrigued by this phenomenon, Dave Allman experimented with other patients and found out that they could recall surgical details despite being under complete anesthesia. And this discovery led to the understanding that being in the operating room can have a subconscious impact on the patient. He also found that positive suggestions during anesthesia could aid recovery. So, despite initial skepticism from the medical community, several studies confirm that patients can process auditory stimuli under anesthesia. And this opens the door to new possibilities for medical research and treatment. So, for instance, a systematic review and meta-analysis of 33 randomized controlled trials involving a total of 4,200 patients found that auditory stimuli such as music or positive suggestions can be perceived during anesthesia and form implicit memories, even without conscious awareness. Music significantly reduced post-operative pain and the need for opioids, while positive suggestions did not seem to have the same effect. But we can say what you said, Ayla, what we experience is that when we have a medical training, that often we hear from nurses who do the pre-screening before surgery, and they speak with patients who already underwent earlier surgery, that sometimes they can recall what was being said during surgery. So we hear that now more and more during surgery, they are using music, if that is possible with regards to the type of surgery, because it not only, as you say, that the study suggests that they have a positive impact with regards to pain, but also it will prevent the patient from hearing unintended negative suggestions. And that can be something like, oh, that machine doesn't work, or that device is broken down. Can you imagine when you are having surgery what this does to you? What device is not working? And during our training, we always say, just mention what is not okay and immediately say, like, we have a completely other device ready for you to go ahead. So this is very important.
Yeah.
We once had a story of a patient who heard, like, this thing is not functioning anymore, and he was thinking it was his heart, and he spent 3 months in the medical ward, in the psychological ward, because of that. And later, with a pre-screening for another surgery, he found out that it was a device, not his heart. So you know how the mind is. It can attribute things that are not meant to be for the subconscious mind. It has to do with completely other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is this is very interesting, and I can imagine that for some people this is like really like, how is that possible that the subconscious mind can retrieve information, and our memories real, our memories reliable, and I think for this podcast it doesn't really matter, because what matters is sort of the thoughts you had leading to up towards the surgery that had a real effect, right? And the thoughts afterwards. And I think especially in your case, Mengjia, that was quite interesting, because I think when I mentioned this at first in class, it kind of triggered you, or you came towards me. So yeah, I'm curious, how was it when you heard that, and what was going on in your mind when we spoke about that?
Yeah, I think when I first heard, I felt a bit scared, but also curious at the same time. I think I even remember myself just like started looking at Roberto for a second, because we talk about it during our lunchtime sometimes. And so I just thought I really wanted to find out what happened. But I think it was really pretty much until we did a few practice when I was already in quite a deep state, but I'm still very sensitive to pain. And we even tried, I think, over 3 times. And one of the tests we did was using the surgical tool, and my classmate at the time, he made this pinch sound. So he didn't really pinch my skin or anything, but he just made this pinch sound. And I felt an instant shock to that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the SDIL practice. So when we practice SDIL in class, just for our listeners who don't know what this is basically a state of hypnosis where you achieve spontaneous anesthesia of the body. So we test it by using what you say, that surgical instrument, and we do it without warning, because if we do it with warning, it's not a proof of SDIL. That would be considered somnambulism, and you can give a suggestion that a person accepts analgesia. But yeah, I remember that it was challenging and interesting in relation to what my mom said about the sounds during surgery, right? That sound kind of made you alert. Okay, and so then how is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, so I think my attitude just changed from only being curious to, well, there must be really something there, because if we already tried 3 times and it still didn't work for me, then I think there must be some kind of blockage or something that happened. So it was very more determined to find out.
Okay. And Roberto, you were in class. You also heard it. I didn't hear from you. Did you have an internal response to that information?
I perfectly remember that moment, that second. Basically, after you just said that point, my mind went off the training. I was on the operating table and I was second guessing. Did I hear something? Did I experience something that I shouldn't have? This issue created a trigger in me that I'm not even conscious about. And I'm aware that I've always been afraid. I've always been worried about needles and blood and surgery in general. It was a phobia of mine. So I thought, okay, if something did not go according to the plan as it did during my surgery, probably I've heard the doctor speaking about something. And I remember also that in the room was full of people during my surgery, because it was actually a class lesson. So there were students in the room with the surgeon learning. And so I was also worried that maybe people not really trained would have like emotional reactions to what was happening, and maybe saying something and compromising the situation in my subconscious in a way. And my thought went directly, okay, am I still scared about that? Do I still have fears about my old thing like blood? surgery and needles, because I do have to take a blood test every 6 months. I had honestly the perfect opportunity to test this 3 weeks ago.
Oh,
Yes, and it was the best time in the hospital I've ever had, to be fair, to
okay.
be honest.
And you think
Because
that is related to having done that session with Mengjia?
definitely, definitely
Okay.
yes.
So I think I'm so curious. Mom, are you also curious?
Yes.
Like maybe you can just share, both of you, how it was working together, because I think, during the training we have several moments of practice, and one moment of practice is tailored towards going to a positive memory. But I think the three of us already discussed, like, because we had a really good group energy, and you were comfortable with each other, that maybe we can use this round of exercise to explore this topic. So how was it? What did you discover?
Yeah, I think we came up with this idea because you, like I said, we tried several times with me. And then you thought, okay, we need to trick the mind not to think about the surgery, and you're not going to tell me what that trick is. So you told Roberto first, and so I think I was the first one who had to go. So then I don't know what the trick will be. And then we went back into my happy memory of my childhood, and then I really had an instant reaction to it. So that was spontaneous. So I already started crying and getting quite emotional just to look for my childhood memory, and I wasn't reliving them. So I was basically seeing memory of pictures that I have seen of my childhood without actually living that moment. And so that makes the moment to go into my surgery really scary for a moment, because I really felt like I'm right on the table. So I think I was choking up in my tear. I had really strong reaction to it. And so the emotion I felt was uncertainty. And so I think there was a lot of compounding in the beginning, before the surgery, that I didn't know what was gonna happen. I knew there are possibilities. They could use less invasive method, or they might be open to keep all my organs. And then there's also this possibility of having endometriosis, which is gonna be a lifetime thing that I still have to manage in the future. So I felt like it was just uncertain for me, even though I felt at the time I made my peace with whatever outcome it is, I'm gonna be okay, because I know I wasn't gonna die.
So just for me to understand, and when I think back of it, indeed, I mentioned to Roberto, take her to her childhood first, but you already started crying and you were not really merging with those childhood experiences. So was it like your subconscious was actually already in that surgery? Even when Roberto was guiding you to the childhood events?
I didn't have any visualization towards it, but the emotion was there. Like a
And
little
was
bit scared, like a bit anxious.
like the surgery you're talking about now?
Just like when he was leading me to the childhood memory.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
You were feeling anxiety and nervous.
Yeah.
If I
And then,
may, I think that the issue was exactly that she was already so predisposed and looking forward to the regression that there wasn't any other space for any other emotion. She already brought up the emotion, and
yeah,
we created a bridge to went to the operating table directly.
yeah.
That's how it went, more or less.
Yeah, your subconscious really wanted to go there. So the emotion came up very easily. And so you really felt being on that operating table. And you, well, as you mentioned, in looking towards that surgery, you were quite, looking forward to it, in a sense, to have it done with. So it was surprising for you to discover that there was so much anxiety during the surgery, or like questions about, oh my God, what's going to happen? What can happen?
Yeah, exactly. I think I could really relate to what Roberto said about the compounding, and that happened for me more before the surgery. So I always felt that I have a good sense of my body. I know that I'm not gonna die. I know it's nothing too serious. But when I met a doctor for the first time, they told me that they discovered a tumor, and plus with that size, it sounded like something's really serious. And when I told my family about it, everyone started to get really shocked. And so I think every time this story repeats itself, everyone heard the word tumor, they got uh, this negative association to it. So I think a lot of time I have to be the one to comfort them instead, because I might have my mom crying and I have to comfort her to say, I'm really feeling fine. I don't think it's going to be that serious. So I think there was a lot of compounding toward that moment. I felt I was actually suppressing my emotions to protect people around me.
And that is what came up.
Yeah.
And were there any details that came up during the regression of like what people were saying who were operating on you, or sounds of machines or anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. So Roberto did a very nice session with guiding me to like really take a moment to notice the surrounding and the sound and so on. And so for me, the day of the surgery was actually very quiet. So all the surgeons, the doctors, they are just doing their work. I did hear the sound of the surgical tools, so that's for sure. And then I also heard the beeping from the monitoring machine, so of my heartbeat and so on.
Oh, how was that to hear?
Actually peaceful.
Yeah, quite interesting.
Yeah.
Such a weird, when you think about it, it's so funny. Like you're in hypnosis in, 2024 in Amsterdam, but you're reliving a surgery that was, I don't know how long it was ago. And you hear your heart at that time beeping on a machine. That's like, when you think about it,
Yeah.
quite, what's that movie? With the red pill and the blue pill?
The Matrix.
It's quite Matrix-like in a sense.
Yeah.
And okay, anything else about your experience during the recovering the information with regression?
Yeah, so I think I found really a lot of peace at that moment, just knowing, like, discover the truth. And I had the feeling that yeah, our body and mind are actually much more capable to deal with this kind of challenges on their own.
That's a beautiful insight. And so how did you, how was it after the regression? And, of course, you had some intense days of training after that, but now you've had some weeks to process. Is there any changes you've noticed in relation to this topic?
Yeah, I think I had a lot more confidence of our body and mind, because I just felt, well, now that I think back to it, it felt a bit silly almost to have so much worry. But if you explain your situation, everyone would say, I of course understand that you would have this anxiety and so on. But because now people think it's so normal to feel that, but we should have had a lot more confidence to our own body and mind that they are able to handle it.
Yeah, well, I guess if anybody needs prep for, surgery, then you would be one good therapist to go to. And you, Roberto. So let's go into your experience, because you also went in hypnosis and Mengjia guided you to that moment.
Yes, that's correct. Well, I have to take a step back before that, because I think that the turning point for me, no, I wouldn't call it a turning point, but something that greatly helped me during my session was actually to perform the session with Menja. Because while we were having that session, I could really feel the emotion. I could really feel she was ready to go to that place and to tackle the issue. And of course, I was emotionally drawn to the situation for the shared experience that we have, and I was feeling emotional myself. So in some way, I had to keep myself in check and just dedicate my full intention to what we were doing. And that already helped me to create a mindset for the specific situation, if you understand what I mean. And I've seen Menja's face after the regression. And from my point of view, you could really see her. She was lighter. She was feeling like there was joy in the air, joy and a little bit of silliness in a way. So everything was so magical after the session that for me going there now, I said, okay, let's just do it because I've just seen a living proof of what can happen, and that's all positive from here. So let's just do it. And
Wow.
I think it went really smooth. It went really easy in a way. And the turning point now for me really, when I was back into regression to cause, back to the operating table, I could really not see or hearing that much, but for me was just a feeling. Was a feeling of what was going on in the room. And my fear of what happened that, okay, something went wrong, clearly. We had to extend the surgery, so there's going to be issues, problems, etc. In my subconscious, you can imagine it was like building up, oh, what's going on? When in reality, the feeling that I had is that well, the surgeon was doing his job. Something can go wrong, but it is part of their job, and they're trained to do so. And they're trained also emotionally to tackle that kind of situations. And I also thought about, okay, what about all the students? Well, actually, that was just another teaching opportunity for the surgeon and a learning opportunity for the students. So, in a way, I felt that through my body, I was allowing people to learn new things, to improve their performances in their future jobs. So, everything went well at the end. It's like I reframed the full situation in a way that was just positive inputs for me. And I think that is also what helped me overcome my fear about blood and needles. Because as I told you, I have the proof, and I had it twice actually, because I also had to lower my medication lately, which is a very good sign. That
Oh,
shows
wow.
me that it's going better in my body.
Yeah.
So as I said before, I don't want to use the term magical, but in a way, that's the way I felt it. Because people might think that going to regression to a very stressful situation of the past might be scary, and it is. But it is mostly the build up to the situation. Because when you are there, you're there with an intention, you're there with a job. And of course, thanks to a capable hypnotherapist, which is Menja in this case, everything went perfectly, everything went amazingly well for me. It really solved not one issue that I thought I could have, but indirectly solved another one, which was my phobia. So
Wow.
for me, it was
Mengjia, you can
really
put this on your profile.
definitely.
That's
It
great to hear.
was really a great experience that I'm really glad and really appreciative for. Thank you, Menja, also for
Thank you too. Yes.
performing that masterclass of session.
Cool. Well, interesting that you mentioned that. So, So basically, we decided to do this, even though the original topic was to work on a positive experience. And then Ayla suggested, why not take a crack at her issue? And Roberto volunteered.
Let's just take a crack at your issue.
Yeah, so
I'll do it.
but I did feel if we're gonna really work on the surgery topic, and I felt my case was a bit simpler. So I just thought maybe it would be better to go with you first, but because we have to do this trick to go around my conscious mind, that I have to go first. So I think in some hindsight, I was still quite concerned about how my reaction is going to affect you, because I don't know what emotional side of me is gonna come up. So I could even still feel a bit like when I was choking up in my tears, I got also a bit scared of how my emotion is going to affect you. But I really felt you were like really there with me. And I know that we talk about it so many times already during lunchtime. And you have the full knowledge of how a surgery procedure looks like. So I think when I wasn't even able to express myself, you could like really guide me into a way to calm myself down and then go to the place that I needed to be.
You also provided me with different details in the days prior to that created a comfortable situation also to share this kind of experience together. Definitely.
Yeah, it's really beautiful to hear that, and I'm really touched also, Roberto, when you speak about regression. You know, like, yeah, it's scary to build up, but when you go there with an intention, and yeah, I'm just super proud of you guys, the way you did it, and you know, after only a few days of training, you were able to do this. And yeah, I'm lost for words. Mom, do you have any response?
Yes, I do have a question for both of you. Did you actually hear the doctors talking, or did you see things or notice things? And how did you take that, if so?
For me, as I said, I didn't see the situation. I don't know if I heard something, but there is probably a way that I'm used to because I also do other kind of disciplines working with energy and whatnot. But for me, it was really a feeling of being in the moment and being fully aware in the situation, even though my eyes were closed. It's like I created literally a bridge, an open window into the past, which is not uncommon for me. I have many windows in which I was aware that I really remember. I can connect the feeling and go back there, which is what we do in regression actually. And for me, it was really a feeling of having everything not under control, but being sure that somebody else was keeping it under control. I don't know if you understand what I mean.
Yes.
It was really a feeling, a feeling. It was a palpable feeling. Like I know 100% that this is what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
And also, as I said, the teaching and learning opportunity, it was really there.
Mm-hmm.
And everything took a dimension that was real, had a perfectly good explanation on what was going on, and that I shouldn't be worried about because even though we had a complication, it was already part of the plan. So this is the feeling that I really digested and made mine, and now I have it. It's
Yeah.
like flicking a switch. I cannot forget it.
Beautiful.
Special.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's also not in hyper detail. It's more like watching a movie and knowing everything is happening, but not so clear in what exactly the doctor is saying to each other. But I just feel that they are communicating.
Yeah, and I think that's also interesting for our listeners. Regression can be experienced so differently for different people and also differently each moment. That's my personal experience. Sometimes it's like this inner knowing or inner feeling. And actually, once I also had, Mom, you did a regression on me, and I was really smelling things from my childhood. That was quite interesting. So yeah, it can really be different. And I guess the key, as you say, Roberto, is in like, allowing the feeling to come up. The feeling is the bridge.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think also, yeah, also in relationship to, when I shared about, the subconscious can hear things under anesthesia, that, it did something, but during the training, you also go into hypnosis all the time. So you're more connected to your emotions. So things that you always notice things, but they don't always go to your conscious awareness. And I guess that going into hypnosis all the time brings you closer to being aware of those physical sensations and emotions. At least that's how I experience it. So
Completely true.
yeah.
Completely.
I felt like all the days we had in this training was already building up to that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, as we are speaking about it now, I'm like, well, it was supposed to happen in a way. Yeah, that was very special. And I think also it could be interesting because we also do medical hypnosis trainings, and we often have people, who work as anesthesiologists or nurses or dentists or people in the medical field. And yeah, having lived through this experience, do you have any advice for people in the medical field to prepare patients that have to undergo surgery?
If I may,
Yeah.
I think I said something like that in the beginning. Is that the continuous compounding of the same information, okay, was of course that information had to reach my ear. I understand that, of course. But the effect that he had on me was kind of negative, to be fair. I know that if I had to approach the same situation right now, it would be extremely, if not completely different from my point of view. But after this training, a gift that really I received is that the insight of the way that I was handling myself and presenting myself to the person I was speaking with, aka the doctors. And I remember that I was anxious, I was stressed, and it was visible from the outside. I was not in a state of peace. And I was basically extending this feeling to the people around me. So other people around me were becoming stressed and anxious. So in a way, looking back, I felt basically what I did was hypnotizing the doctors by sharing my feelings of the situation, which is not ideal. It is not an ideal situation because in those cases, the doctor should be the one conducting, let's just say, the conversation to bring you to a point in which you have the information. But would it be amazing if in this conversation we could just spend 1 minute to give a positive suggestion? Just something, for example, like we do it all the time. The statistics are wonderful about this kind of operation. Could be true, but the statistics, like, because the stats that the people were giving me, like, we have a 4% that this contraindication can happen. And I was thinking, oh, 4%, but on how many? So I was trying to look at the data to see if it could apply to me in a way, when in reality, I didn't need all of that. I just needed to know, okay, this can happen, but trust me, the chance is extremely low. It would have been a perfectly good situation, but all the emotions that I was sharing in the people in the room with me were basically validating my fear, because I could see that the eyes of the doctors that I was afraid, and the doctor was also, oh, this guy is really afraid. And it was just this non-verbal communication that was validating my fear over and over again. When in reality, when just a little bit of, I don't want to say training of education, but something that I said to most of the people I know, my family and friends, is that the first 2 or 3 days of the training that we had, Ayla, should be mandatory for everybody. It should be a program school in high school or something.
What subject?
Yes, just those 2, 3 informations on how our mind works, how our subconscious works, and
Yeah.
retrieve information and elaborate information. All those kind of things can really greatly improve any person on any level, and especially medical professionals. Because
It's very
guiding, yeah,
interesting, Roberto, because I've never thought about it this way. I hear you say I was hypnotizing the doctors through my fear.
yeah,
And I like it in a sense that you take ownership for your own feelings.
oh yes,
But I can imagine a lot of patients are not at that place of consciousness to take responsibility for their own feelings. But I like that angle. But when I hear you, you mentioned about this statistics, I'm also thinking because, when we do the training, a lot of medical professionals are concerns of the ethics. I have to be honest.
yes.
But, instead of saying there's a 4% chance of having this contraindication, you could flip it around. 96% chance that it will be fine.
Wouldn't it be
And then the
beautiful?
focus.
It would be beautiful to hear something like that. It would really lift your spirit. Oh, okay, 96%. Oh, that's just a breeze. I will easily do that, effortlessly.
Yeah.
Well, there is a difficulty. There are a number of procedures where the patient really needs to make their own informed decision. And where afterwards they say, if I would have known that beforehand, I wouldn't have done it. So that sometimes is the ethical question. We talked about it this week during the medical training. But still then, if you have given the honest information and a decision has been made, then I think your advice is very wise, not keeping dwelling on it and starting to give the positive outlook on it. And it also depends on the type of surgery. Some surgery is inevitable. And then dwelling on all these side effects, there is a certain percentage when it goes wrong, then the medical person is, he has to, from insurance's perspective, to mention the side effects. But that can be done in a much more positive way. And that's a thing that we pay a lot of attention to during the training. So we don't want people, we want people to give the honest information, but being aware about the psychological mechanisms of the patients. There are a lot of ways to bring it in the best possible way. And it also helps not only the patients to be more comfortable, but also, and I guess, Roberto, you can vouch for that now as well, for the medical staff, because they are less prone to the fears and anxiety of the patients.
If I can supply an example about this, the last conversation, and I remember this very clearly, the last conversation I had with my surgeon before the operation, of course, there was this young assistant, this young lady in the room with us, and I was verbalizing my fears to the surgeon, and while doing so, I was, as I said, anxious and afraid, as I said, and I started to tear up a little bit. I suppressed it, of course, because, but the young lady had watery eyes and left the room for a couple of minutes. And what went through my mind is, okay, she's leaving the room, but I'm going to have surgery. So if she's like that right now, how should I feel? This didn't help, of course. And just a couple of information on how to better handle this kind of communication, it would be nice to have. Yeah.
For sure. Mengjia, do you have any advice from your experience?
Yeah, so mine comes a bit from both sides because I really met with so many different doctors because the size of my cyst, it took a long time to find out where exactly is. So I had doctors of different styles. So the type, like the first person that told me it is a tumor, even after I challenged him, is this really the right term for it? I think that one really affected a lot of the emotion from my family and friends because they really had a negative association to, well, there's something serious. But then the other doctors that I met, they're actually super positive about it. I think that really changed a lot of things. So I also see myself as quite a logical person. So I ask about what are the chances and what most likely gonna happen. I always try to get those details. But they always keep it very open, like, well, it could happen, but we're gonna try our best. And yeah, we're gonna keep the ovaries and we love ovaries, so don't worry. And also, even after my surgery, I asked, oh, can I go back to sports now? Can I do this and that? They were really like, just live your life. You can do anything you want. So I think those attitude really help a lot. But then on the other hand, thinking about my fear for the surgery that was built up afterwards, I think is when they explained the complication about the bleeding. Because I think in my logical thinking, I thought what kind of complication could make the surgery took 3 times longer. And so it was a lot of try to analyze what happened. So when I went back in regression, I was really trying to locate the specific moment when this probably very panicking situation happened, as you could see in a series sometimes.
Like
But
ER, Grey's Anatomy.
yeah, exactly. But it was just quiet, very routine day. So I think if someone could have told me, yeah, yes, there was this complication, but it also happens a lot, and we are totally capable of dealing with it, or just give like a benchmark. Because probably a complication for them is something that happens thousands times a day, but for me, having my first surgery in my life, I would really think something serious happened.
Yeah, that's an interesting point indeed. Yeah, very valuable. Well, yeah, I'm so full of this conversation, so much to digest. I think maybe it's time to round it up. So if there's any last things to be shared, or Mom, do you have any questions left?
No, I really admire your coming with this, impactful stories, and we learn a lot from it.
Yeah, I also really appreciate you guys coming and speaking about this so openly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, thank you also for doing this, because I think it's really important to share as much as we can this knowledge, especially among medical professionals. This is a thing that will help people for sure, will greatly improve the feelings of moving towards a difficult step that can be, that surgery can be, and approach it with a not anxiety and worries, but with, I'm gonna make it and I'm gonna be fine. It could change a lot of lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah.
Probably not only for medical professionals. I felt like people around you also,
Yeah.
like you are. I think it's an interesting concept that when you're in your emotion, you might have also hypnotized people around you. So so I sometimes think about like when someone is pregnant and then the partner always have to go to these sessions with them, so you can kind of know what's expecting. So it could also be like with surgeries. So when you have a partner or someone really close to you who's undergoing it, so a lot of times you think you're showing your empathy, but
Yeah.
it might come in a I don't know, very inconvenient way because there are so much emotion attached to it. And I think I even had a appointment with a medical student. So she did my intake before I went into the appointment with the doctor. And when I was going through my situation, and she had a very emphasized way saying, "Oh, you have really gone through a lot," which I think it was really sweet at the time, but it might have also added some emotion onto me.
Yeah. Well, the topic of empathy, I can speak about this. We can also have a podcast about this because I did trainings in nonviolent communication, and what a lot of people think empathy is, it's like consoling or giving advice. But what empathy actually is like giving space for the other people to feel their feelings. So, when somebody shares something impactful with you and you respond with, "Oh, I recognize it," you're already shifting the focus. So I think this is also probably something, Roberto, we have to add to the curriculum for every school in every country in the world.
Definitely. Yeah.
Hypnosis 101, empathy 101. But I thank you very much. And we're going to close this episode. Maybe if you like, we can put the links to your websites if you have them. I don't know yet, or if people want to contact you, because I'm thinking, if people are working towards a surgery and they're having anxiety, maybe they can reach out. And I think it could be a topic to work with regression to prepare people, even though they didn't have it yet. But, to work on that positive expectancy, and who better than you guys to do that?
I actually have already a connection for this an opportunity like this to work in a hospital with cancer patients.
Oh, that's interesting to hear.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
That's something that honestly I was not looking forward to, but not only you, but many other people suggested me that to do it, and I tried that. And it's also partially why I would like to specialize. I made my specialization in regression to cause, because for me, it just comes naturally in a way. And I really like the feeling of seeing people resolving their issues, or leaving fear behind, or just getting more, a little small piece of peace of mind before the surgery, an anchor to reach for, just relax. There are many tools in our pockets now to help people. I'm really grateful for that.
Well, that's really great to hear. So we will add your details so that people can contact you and you. And I thank you so much. And we will see or hear our listeners for the next time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye all.